Hi everybody, and welcome to another art video. Today it's going to be part 2 of my 3-part series where I draw my profile picture for Facebook. And the first thing you'll notice right away is that the ink I'm using is not pure black. It's actually a really dark purple that's indistinguishable from black. What that's going to allow me to do later is do a color burn, which will add warmth to my drawing. We also want to make sure we have good lines, so we don't want to do these sketchy, non-committed lines. Those are bad. We want lines like this. That's a good, confident line. And another difference between digital and traditional is that we have the undo button. I do not have this luxury when I'm doing traditional art with pen and ink. So you'll see that that gets used a lot, because another difference between traditional and digital is that with digital, the smoothness of the tablet is very high. It's like drawing on glass, and so it's very difficult to control. Paper has a little bit more friction to it, so it's easier to control your pen, so you're less likely to make a mistake, but if you do make a mistake, it's pretty permanent. Another difference that's kind of important is the ability to move the paper around. And that's because your hand can only draw curves in one direction. It can draw a curve away from the hand. It can't draw a curve going towards the hand because of the shape of the bones and the way the muscles of the hand work. So with this digital drawing, I can't do that. You can reverse the drawing, and I do recommend that, but I don't do it in this video because it makes it more difficult for you to watch. And I'm starting to get warmed up and make my lines quicker and better. And I think this just about concludes the first inking. That's right, there is a second inking. The purpose of the second inking is to add a lot of character to the lines. You'll see these lines are all basically the same thickness. They're quite boring to look at, and it's not a very interesting drawing. The purpose of the second inking is to add character to these lines, which means thickness, and it's also to enhance the 3D effect and separate the different elements. So show which parts belong to the clothes and which parts belong to the glasses and the hat, and separate the hoodie from the t-shirt, and you'll see all that later. So I've just made a second layer. I've turned the opacity of the first inking down so that it's not in my visual way, and I'm just going to do a couple practice lines. And what I realize is I'm having problems with my settings. No matter how hard I push the stylus, I'm not getting any thickness. So my first thing is I'm going to make the size of the brush a little bit bigger and check that out. And I'm still not getting any variation. And I also see that I'm having some problems with the opacity. So I'm going to go fix those in the settings. I'm going to go to hard round pressure size. That allows the pressure to work. And I'm going to turn the opacity all the way up. That way I don't get a fading effect. And just going to check, do a couple lines, and that looks good. Those look good. So since these are the final lines, I might have to press the undo button quite a bit until I get a line that I'm happy with. And of course I will go back and thicken up some of these lines in strategic places. Going back to the difference between the traditional and the digital art, there's two more differences. So I talked about using the undo button, smoothness of the tablet, the ability to move paper. One difference is that with a traditional piece, you produce a one-of-a-kind art, and that has a lot more value than a digital Photoshop file, in my opinion. I can give you the file, but it's just a copy of another file. It's too easy to make copies, and I believe that kills the value. Um, so that's one difference. And the other difference is that with the traditional, a lot of the inks will have glossy finishes, which will catch the light and look really cool, and even be raised up and textured. So those are some serious bonuses to the traditional. Now what you'll see I'm doing now is I am going through now and I am thickening the lines. And this is when the drawing is going to start to look much better. But I'm not doing it randomly. In my mind, I'm imagining where the light is coming from in this drawing. And where I believe the light is coming from is from the top left of the drawing, right here. So that means that shadows are going to be cast on the lower right-hand side of things, especially things that are being blocked by the light. So underneath the baseball cap and underneath the chin is always a place to find heavier shadows, because that helps indicate that the face is sticking forward onto the head. And right here you'll start to see that the hoodie would block light here, so I'm starting to thicken up these lines as well. And not being too careful about it. You don't want to make inking lines in a very careful way, because you'll cause your lines to not be smooth, and that will hurt the character. Like I said, don't do any choppy lines. Do them in one go if you can. Sometimes for these thicker ones you can get away with brushing them in, but you can't really get away with it like that during the traditional ink. You can also press the undo button and try different things. So I think that was too much, so I'm going to just add a little bit back in to separate the glasses from the face. So I talked a lot about digital and traditional inking. Which one do I prefer? My strong preference is for the traditional inking. For me, it is a lot easier because I do have a lot more control with my inking tools. And the inking tool that I prefer to use is a Maru pen with a small nib. Maru pens are famous in Japan for from manga because of the character of the lines that they produce. They produce very thin and thick lines based off of pressure sensitivity, and they're great. I use the smallest nib because I'm a pretty strong guy and I have a pretty heavy hand. So if I use the smallest nib, I'll get lines like everybody else. If I use the nib everybody else uses, I'm going to get these really big thick lines. And it took a long time for me to learn how to use this Maru pen. It took me about a year to get really comfortable with it. And then it's about choosing the correct ink that you like. I like to use Deleter ink because it's available, and my preferred is Deleter number 6. Deleter number 6 is fast drying, so I'm less likely to smear the ink, and it's also slightly glossy, and it's Copic safe, which means the ink is water soluble, so I can't use it with watercolor paints, but I can use it with my alcohol-based markers. So I think Deleter 6 is great. Sometimes I will use Deleter 4 for something that's more important, because it has the same properties as the Deleter 6, except it's higher gloss, but it doesn't dry as fast. So that's a big difference. So what I prefer to use a Maru pen and Deleter 6 ink or Deleter 4 ink. And I do prefer that over digital. But the advantage of digital is it's easier to produce a video like this for people to watch. So you'll see that I'm near the end of my inking, and I think that does it for today. Thank you very much for watching this video. Part 3 will be out sometime in the future, and you'll see me color this guy digitally. Thank you very much, and have a great day.